Well, it's finally here. The DreamWorks ranking I've been working on for so long. I'm really excited to share my thoughts that I've been gathering up for a long time. Before we get started, I want to say a few things. First of all, I won't be doing number transitions because they take a lot of time, and I really did them just for formatting style and to be derivative of Schaefer-Ellis's videos. They really don't add any value, and I can perfectly express my feelings on the movies without having transitions between the segments, as it's easy to tell when I'm talking about which movie, and you can count if you want to know what place I'm at. And also, if you notice that my voice changes throughout the video, that should go to show you how long I worked on it. Let's get started. And the award for the worst DreamWorks movie ever made goes to Home. Probably not what you're expecting, huh? Home is one of the worst animated movies I've ever seen in my life. It is agonizingly bad. I can't remember the last time a movie gave me nothing to enjoy quite like this one. It's basically the DreamWorks equivalent of Ralph Breaks the Internet. But at least Ralph Breaks the Internet has a good idea at its core and like a couple good scenes. Home has nothing. It is worthless. Every single character, relationship, and plot point in this movie feels hollow and artificial. Nothing is genuine. Nothing is earned. The plot is just Lilo and Stitch again, but done without a single touch of that movie's brilliance. Oh, watch this girl become friends with an alien. Isn't that inspiring? No, because that's all this movie is. It doesn't have any great themes or additional layers of brilliance on top of its simple premise. It is literally just a girl who meets an alien and they become friends. That's it. It's not dramatic. It's not enticing. It's not funny. Good God, is it not funny? I didn't laugh, chuckle, smile, or even think, wow, that was a good attempt at a joke once. There is nothing here. The plot is hysterically predictable at every turn. There are no surprises whatsoever, which is ironic since this movie has a goddamn twist. Well, okay, maybe it's a good twist. No, it's honestly the worst twist I've ever seen in a movie. You're telling me that this one guy was attacking them? Did they really never have an opportunity to talk it out? It's not like this situation is any different, or that the Gorg knows that these guys are trying to find peace. In their perspective, this is the same war he's been fighting all these years, but now this is the final battle. He takes off his mask, tells the main characters that he's really looking for his babies and he's benevolent, which he apparently never tried to explain before to anyone else. What the fuck? That's not how you write a twist villain. That's not how you write a fucking movie. The third act is embarrassing because the movie has to add conflict to stretch out the movie, so the two main characters split up. Bro, this doesn't even make sense in the context of the movie. Are you kidding me? They need to come together and apologize and realize they were wrong because this is a movie for babies. Literal fucking infants. Well, gee, it's a good thing this baby movie has annoying characters and unfunny jokes that make Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate look like comedy gold. I still can't believe this came from DreamWorks. It's an absolute travesty that doesn't deserve to be talked about in the same breath as films like Megamind, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Prince of Egypt. I went into this marathon knowing that DreamWorks had its fair share of terrible films, and even I was insulted and appalled by the level of sheer worthlessness present in Home. DreamWorks, do better. Whew. I hope the next movie on the list doesn't make me as angry. I mean, what the fuck do you want me to say? This is one of the worst sequels of all time and one of the worst animated movies I've ever had the displeasure of sitting through. It's awful by blue sky standards. There's enough to talk about here to fill up a 3-hour review, but honestly, what is the point? You know exactly what's wrong with this film. If you accept the insane premise that destroys every good thing the original film had going for it, you're stuck with the most frustratingly stupid story DreamWorks has ever concocted. It is astounding how bad at her job Poppy is. Imagine Avengers Infinity War, but Tony tries to solve the conflict with hugs and kisses even after Thanos proves he's beyond redemption multiple times, and you basically have Trolls World Tour. Everyone in this movie is a complete idiot to the point where it's not an exaggeration to call Branch the smartest character. As you can imagine, this makes for a completely intolerable viewing experience. Like, by intolerable, I mean this movie is worse than Minions and Secret Life of Pets 2. Yes, DreamWorks has made something worse than the worst Illumination movies. It's like they were actively trying to make a bad movie with this one. Like, there's a couple other terrible DreamWorks movies, but with those movies, they at least tried. They were failed, but earnest attempts to make a good movie. But this? No, no, no. I refuse to believe that there was ever any intention of making this a good movie. It's impossible. I would legitimately rather rewatch Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs than this pile of shit. That's a movie that clearly had less effort put into it, yet it manages to be more mature, more entertaining, and less infuriating than this DreamWorks movie. I am not joking. Trolls World Tour is a movie for infants and absolutely no one else. Do I not sound angry enough? Well, that's because I straight up don't care. I don't give a shit about Trolls. And while this movie was a terrible start to this decade of DreamWorks films, it's not like it ruined a franchise I was emotionally invested in. This is a terrible idea for a bad franchise, and this movie is the exact legacy that this franchise deserves. Fuck you. This movie legitimately made me question my sanity over and over, and I have seen many crazy movies. I didn't think anything could break me, but this movie did. I had trouble processing not only what was real and what was imaginary in the movie, but also whether or not the movie itself was a twisted, feverish figment of my imagination. Eventually, everything calmed down and I was able to just watch the simultaneously nonsensical and conventional story unfold. The funniest parts of the entire movie were the attempts at emotional moments, like when Boss Baby and the boy have a falling out and Boss Baby storms away. I just burst out laughing because what the fuck did the movie expect me to do? Get emotional over the character of Boss Baby? It's Boss Baby. Then there's the ending where Hans Zimmer goes so inexplicably hard on the score that it's hysterical. Bro, this is Boss Baby you're scoring. Why are you scoring so hard? You're just making the scene more ridiculous. I don't know, man. Boss Baby is insane. It's horrifying and cutesy, boring and captivating, unfunny and hilarious. A true enigma of an experience. It's everything I remember it being, and more. Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken is a movie with krakens. They do kraken stuff. Okay, look. This movie sounds like it has a good plot on paper. It tackles revisionist history and racism and stuff. No, it doesn't. It pays brief lip service to those topics before bombarding you with teenage slang in increasingly cringy ways. It is about as deep as a glitter-filled puddle. The plot of this movie is just Luca, where there's a child from an underwater species who wants to do real-world stuff against the wishes of their parents. But also, Ruby tries to befriend a villain against her mother's wishes, like How to Train Your Dragon 2. It's not plagiarism if you steal from yourself, kids. I guess the climax was okay. The animation was okay sometimes. I don't know. Imagine being in a most generic animated movie of all time competition and your opponent is Spirit Untamed. This movie is completely nothing. It isn't bad in an insulting way, it has nice moments, and presumably good intentions. It's just so basic and unoriginal that the emotional moments feel cheesy and uninspired. And that's the basic description I'd give this movie overall. Pure, unadulterated boredom that I never want to experience again. But at least it had its moments. Turbo is such an atrocious movie, and I don't understand how people like it. With that said, I love this movie. I am obsessed with it. It is such a baffling failure of an animated movie in every conceivable way that it is truly captivating. Literally the only thing about this movie that works is the voice acting. The writing is complete garbage, but the way these actors deliver their lines lead to some genuine, unironically funny moments. Otherwise, the animation is laughably bland. Every single character is either annoying or unlikable. Turbo is delusional, but the movie will continue to insist that he's just a big dreamer and what he does is normal. The movie prides itself on its edgy jokes and attempts to be a sports movie geared towards adults, and it magically resolves conflict like it's an episode of Cocomelon. Literally every single thing people hate about DreamWorks is in this movie. It is the perfect storm of awfulness that only comes once in a blue moon. It is a joy to watch and think about and meme and be truly baffled by. I was never bored watching Turbo. I was always fully alert and attentive. I adore this movie, and my obsession with it has only grown with every day. And this can all be attributed to two magic words: ironic enjoyment. And don't even get me started on the Mexican stereotypes. If Home was a terrible movie intended for babies, Trolls is a really good movie intended for babies. The animation is stellar. It makes the whole thing look like a really neat art project. And honestly, I kind of liked it for about 30 minutes before it turned into, oh, let's sing a bunch of pop song covers as we try to help this lady goblin hook up with King Goblin. That's fun. Look, once again, this is a great baby movie, but it has such a boring story and the emotional moments are so forced that my interest in the film took a complete nosedive. Whatever, it's a big old whatever movie that I have hilariously little to say about. Moving on. Monsters vs. Aliens is not very good. It's not quite as bad as I was expecting it to be. I mean, this movie made me laugh at least 6 or 7 times, so that's worth something, I guess. None of the characters are hateable, though none of them are particularly likable. The action has such astoundingly low energy that it bored me to tears. And I feel like the idea of a monster movie parody could have been fleshed out better than not at all. Like, this isn't a parody of monster movies. It's just a monster movie for children that isn't particularly funny or enjoyable. Why not do what Megamind did and tell a really unique story that plays with the conventions of the superhero genre? Hell, I feel like even Shark Tale handled a parody angle better, since a shark mafia is at least an idea that parodies a typical mafia movie, even if they don't do anything with it. Bottom line is, you could do a lot worse than Monsters vs. Aliens, but you could do a lot better. I was not looking forward to The Croods, let me tell you. Even though there were a lot of DreamWorks movies I didn't watch as a kid, I really have nothing against them, just a lack of interest. But The Croods was a movie I tried watching, but then turned off because I actively didn't like it. Turns out I really didn't miss much. It's not as bad as I was expecting. I mean, I kind of liked it at first. It was nice and simple and charming, but its charm wears thin pretty quickly, and I was really bored with it during the second half. It's just an hour and a half of generic family conflicts, and haha, here's cavemen inventing a modern thing, which is just super repetitive. I was really disappointed when the cinematic icon Grug, played by Nicolas Cage, threw his family off a cliff towards the end. It was disappointing because I thought that meant they were dead and the movie could officially end. But sadly, no. Look, it's a perfectly serviceable kids movie, and it has a couple good laughs, like the recurring joke where the monkey sings "dun dun dun" after a supposedly dramatic line. But it really can't make up for a dull experience. I'll end on a positive note, though. The animation is real pretty. They did an amazing job with the vibrant, creative environments and creature designs, so good work. Sinbad, more like Sin Bad. After 3 really good 2D animated feature films in a row, Sinbad feels like a massive step down in every way except the animation. This is a gorgeous looking movie, not just on a basic level, but in the sense that it's a unique, gorgeous, amazing animation style with amazing creature designs, with amazing textures that still look amazing to this day. The story is about as basic and uninteresting as it gets. It's a MacGuffin quest for a magic book that has completely unexplained mystical powers. The only thing this book is used for is to power a lighthouse. Really, that's just a flimsy excuse for a sailing adventure. I feel like this would make a pretty decent video game story, but simply watching it unfold is a little tedious. I mean, if I wanted to watch a comedy 2D DreamWorks movie about a creative overseas adventure, I'd just watch The Road to El Dorado. The characters were okay, but Sinbad himself really got on my nerves. throughout most of the movie. Eris is really well animated, but she couldn't be more basic from a character standpoint if she tried. She's a good villain, but not one of DreamWorks' all-time best. Look, this movie is fine, but compared to the DreamWorks movies that came around the same time, it just feels like it's doing the bare minimum. I don't really feel like ever watching it again, sorry.
Ants was surprisingly not terrible. I'm impressed. Granted, there are a lot of terrible moments, like when the two main characters get stuck on a piece of gum on someone's shoe. It's this movie's stilted and awkward animation at its worst. And also, the plot during the second half of the movie doesn't make much sense, and it kind of makes the first half pointless. And I have no idea why the movie decided to kill off its most likable character, Barbados. And the film keeps making a new edgy adult joke every 5 minutes, so that's annoying. But the movie's not terrible, I swear. The main characters honestly just have a really charming dynamic with each other, and I like watching them go on this journey. There's a few jokes and loony scenarios that actually really land for me. Like when they go to Insectopia, the entire adventure and journey there is pretty enjoyable. I like that. I like how the plot is basically get to the princess, and then it's get back home, until the second half kind of drops that plotline for something more confusing. But yeah, the characters are surprisingly charming enough, and the ant inventions are inventive enough to keep this loose plot afloat. Like, you're seriously gonna tell me that Home had more thought and effort and creativity put into it than this? Get out of town. Ants is a deceptively sweet movie that clearly had some good heart thrown into it, but it also has a lot holding it back from being very good. Still, I appreciate the effort. Never gonna watch it again, but congrats to this movie for subverting my expectations of it and being not terrible.
The animation was very good. Crude's A New Age is one of my weirdest anticipation cycles of all time. I have made it very clear in the past that I don't need a movie to be deep and narratively compelling if it can make up for it by being turn off your brain popcorn entertainment. But that excuse can only really work one time. See, you excuse flaws for the first time around because the movie doesn't know any better, so it takes gambles, and regardless of whether or not you like every single element, you give it a pass because you enjoy the good stuff. But ideally, a sequel to a mediocre movie will acknowledge the mistakes of the original and double down on the good elements while leaving the bad elements behind. But Crude's A New Age looked like it was doubling down on every element because its true goal wasn't to continue the story, it was to be the first movie again. Same highs, same lows, same everything. I wasn't particularly excited, but I figured I would go in with an open mind and maybe the movie would surprise me. And you know what? It did surprise me. It's even worse than I thought. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible movie or anything. It's a breath of fresh air compared to Trolls World Tour, but anything would be a breath of fresh air compared to that movie. That really isn't saying much. Now, when I say this didn't live up to my already low expectations, I only mean that very slightly. I expected something average, and instead I got something that actually kind of pissed me off with its mediocrity. Which is crazy, because it's still an improvement over the original. Regardless of how mediocre it is in a vacuum, I should be pleased that it's better than the original. But unlike the original, this film had missed potential, and it just wasted it. B-Movie is one of the most insane animated movies I've ever seen. But is it good? This movie is basically a good version of Happy Feet. It's completely all over the place and absolutely bonkers, but I think I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, I understand the concept of having some movies not make sense, and the entire appeal of it is laughing at how intentionally bonkers and crazy they are. But there's a right and wrong way to do that. Obviously, these movies don't need to be taken seriously and don't need to feel fully realistic. But as I've said countless times, any movie needs balance. What makes Shark Tale work so well is that in spite of being an insane comedy, it still has a straightforward story. So you're laughing at the jokes, but it's also easy to follow and not get too confused. Plus, as forced as the emotional moments in Shark Tale are, them being there at least allows the story to feel down to earth and not overly bonkers. This movie has a ton of great individual jokes, but when the connective tissue is this insane, it's kind of impossible to get invested. I like how the main character forms a romantic relationship with a human. I like the courtroom scene, but this movie is just so scattershot that it's really hard to say if it's good overall. Its adult themes and jokes are almost a little jarring, unlike something like Rango, where it feels like they naturally fit the story. Vanessa is kind of flat and annoying, but I like the other characters enough. The timing on a lot of the jokes is weirdly off. And I don't know if that's a symptom of the stilted, awkward animation or what, but yeah, whatever. Despite loving the Shrek franchise as a kid, I never saw the first Puss in Boots until last year, when I wanted to get context for the sequel after watching said sequel. And after rewatching it, eh. One thing I appreciate about this movie is that it's definitely not a Shrek movie. Despite being a spin-off, it's completely tonally distinct from the Shrek franchise, and it never once feels like I'm watching a Shrek movie. The downside of that is that this movie is nowhere near as good as any of the Shrek movies. Whereas Shrek subverts the fairy tale genre, Puss in Boots plays it completely straight. It's basically just a Jack and the Beanstalk Humpty Dumpty mashup adaptation, and it really doesn't do anything particularly special. My favorite part of the movie is this extended flashback sequence where we see Puss and Humpty's childhood and what caused them to split apart. But it ends up taking so much time that the actual quest feels really short and underwhelming. I would have loved a DreamWorks take on an Indiana Jones or Uncharted-like story, but the quest is over before it really gets interesting. It's also a shockingly unfunny movie. Like, the four Shrek movies have so many good laughs, but I can't remember anything that humorous from this film. I like the ultimate resolution to Puss and Humpty's relationship, and it makes the climax pretty interesting. But aside from that, it's just an aggressively okay movie. Nothing here is bad, but nothing here is done particularly well either. It's just kind of a mixed bag. Although Puss does refer to himself as the furry lover multiple times, so that's something, I suppose. I must be out of my mind, because I honestly kind of liked Madagascar 2 in my most recent viewing, and that's insane. I've always considered this to be the weakest of the trilogy, but truth be told, it's pretty good on rewatch. The main characters are outside of Alex are still pretty pointless and are shoved into ridiculous side plots, but I kind of liked said ridiculous side plots. The action during the climax is pretty exciting. The humor isn't quite as bad as I remember. I think the real problem was the character design on the new characters. It's pretty awful and just screams lazy, but the jokes aren't as terrible as I remember. They're not that good, though. This is still the least funny Madagascar, and there's a bunch of tedious drama, and the way the villain manipulated Alex's father to resign as king is really contrived and lame. And why did the movie have so many forced emotional moments? It doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. It's still not a great movie, but honestly, there's a lot to like here to balance out the stuff I don't like. I regret not seeing that stuff sooner, but whatever. Madagascar is pretty good. It's got a ton of really funny stuff and a ton of not great stuff. Honestly, in hindsight, it's kind of ridiculous that this gigantic franchise spawned from this movie. Like, I never could have imagined it if I didn't know that was the case, because this movie is really nothing special. I honestly don't have much to say about it that the internet hasn't said already. It's a perfectly adequate, sometimes extremely funny movie that I'm pretty nostalgic for, but it's not really that great, so whatever. The only thing I have left to say is that comedy peaked during literally any scene involving the penguins. Look at that. Comedy gold.
There is so much to love about Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. The animation is stunning. Honestly, this is what made me realize that 2D animation is the most timeless form of animation out there. This film looks amazing more than 20 years later. The characters are also really endearing and likable. I enjoy their interactions and designs and jokes and such, and the climax is a ton of fun. So yeah, I love just about everything in this movie. Except the story. I found that incredibly tedious and uninteresting. Oh boy, the horse meets a Creek Indian, hangs out with him, and there's no momentum. It's just boring. Why couldn't the movie be more like a slice of life Ghibli movie, where it has no clear story, but still sucks you in with a simple charm? Why do we have to waste most of the movie on his relationship with Lady Horse? It's so boring and ultimately feels really disconnected from the climax. So yeah, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron looks amazing and has great characters, but I really don't feel like sitting through most of it a second time. It had everything but an interesting story, which was on the verge of greatness. It was this close.
For the most part, all of my childhood opinions on DreamWorks movies are accurate to my current thoughts and feelings, except for one where I definitely gave a movie too much credit. Yeah, there's a certain DreamWorks sequel that really wasn't as good as I gave it credit for, and that movie, of course, is Madagascar 3. Don't get me wrong, it's still the best main series Madagascar movie. It actually tried to have emotional beats with the main characters. The funny scenes in this are still insanely funny. But after rewatching this one so close to some other much funnier DreamWorks movies, it really started to hit me that this one isn't nearly as funny as I remembered. Hell, the first one might actually be funnier overall, even if it does rely a lot on tedious pop culture references. Point is, while I still think this is the best one, I don't think it's easily the best one anymore. I love a lot about it, like the Sonya stuff, the car chase stuff, the Vitaly stuff, the Sonya stuff, the circus stuff, the penguin stuff, the Sonya stuff, the Captain Dubois stuff, the Sonya stuff. Wait, what was I talking about again? But man, the lie reveal plot is very lame and it takes up a lot more time than I remember as well. Whatever, it's still a good movie, but I feel like if I want a stronger comedy, I'll just watch something with hedges or sharks in it instead. Abominable was amazing for like 25 minutes. Then it turns into a worse version of Up. Movies like these really frustrate me because they could easily go down as classics with a little story retooling. But instead, this film has already been forgotten about. My favorite aspects of the film were during the beginning, like I said, where we see the main character living life, saving up money, and befriending this Yeti creature. It was wholesome as heck, and pretty magical, not gonna lie. But again, these characters soon hop on this boat and go on an adventure through the wilderness to get this Yeti home, and it's not really that good. The Yeti has vague, convenient, magical powers that do whatever the plot needs them in order to get the characters out of any situation, which is really lame. In a movie like Onward, they use different unique spells for each situation. This movie just has magic Yeti powers that can do anything, basically, and it really deflates the tension. You start to ask, why can't the Yeti just fly them straight to his home if he can basically do anything? Also, there's a twist villain in this movie. Despite legitimately being well done, doesn't really add to the story at all. If you took the twist villain out of the story and played it straight, the story would not really change. So that's odd. I don't know, man. This movie tried, but not hard enough as far as I'm concerned. Props for setting the story in a place that isn't America, though. It's cool to see different cultures portrayed in animated movies. Well, I finally watched Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and it's really fun. What it lacks in simple charm compared to the original show, it makes up for in zaniness and surprisingly good action. The plot is actually decent and the villain is enjoyable. Plus, there are plenty of funny moments here and there. The movie kind of loses me with this girl who isn't really that interesting. Her friendship with Sherman is forced as hell, and it doesn't make sense considering how she acted earlier in the movie. Plus, any attempt at an emotional moment really fall flat. Bro, this is Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Just fully immerse yourself in the zaniness and don't bother with the drama. Whatever, it's still a really fun time, but once again, I don't have that much to say about it. It's fun, but flawed. Trolls Band Together is pretty good. I enjoy this movie's sense of humor, I like the villains a lot, I like the action, and I like how the golf course Sanctuary of Survivors is shown as its own mini troll society. And the villain's plan is honestly really creative and clever. Gotta give some props there. Some stuff isn't too great, like the cheesy moments that try to take themselves seriously. The movie also does the whole, oh, the main characters don't like each other and there's wacky misunderstandings over and over again. Whoopsie shtick. And that's annoying. Also, this movie does the whole, the main character discovers a long-lost family member out of nowhere thing. And it feels kind of forced with Poppy because the hints given that she would find a sister later in the movie weren't subtle at all. But hey, this is still a pretty fun movie with the most alarmingly annoying fan base on the planet. But that isn't the movie's fault, so that's okay, I guess. Good movie, that's all, moving on. Back in 2021, I assumed Boss Baby Family Business would be boring and tedious, just like the first movie. But holy shit, you guys, I was pleasantly surprised. Against all logic and reason and common sense, I had a very good time with this movie. It's a lot more focused and less random than the original, which was basically just a high budget fever dream. This time, the focus is mostly on the family shenanigans, which are very funny and emotional. There's all sorts of conflicts between all sorts of characters, and yeah, surprisingly, I found all this drama and conflict to be interesting. Not amazing, oh god no, but it was investing in a way that the first movie just wasn't. Seriously, I must stress enough. I have no pre-existing investment in any of these characters, but I love how this sequel takes the table scraps the first movie left and expands them in logical and interesting ways. This movie is such a natural extension of the first movie story because, damn it, DreamWorks are the masters of continuing stories over multiple installments. I mean, aside from Trolls World Tour and Spirit Untamed. Okay, fine. They aren't perfect at making sequels, but they're definitely better than Disney. Dude, I loved the Bad Guys books as a kid. They were hilarious and awesome and everything I could have hoped for. And it's so refreshing to see a movie adaptation that perfectly captures what made the original book so special, right down to the character designs. The Bad Guys is just so good. The art style of this movie is incredible, capturing the charm of the original book series designs expertly. Wolf and Snake have amazing chemistry, and the icon Professor Marmalade is a great villain as well. Plus, the bad guys team itself is epic, bro. This movie kind of falters in the pacing department. Like, way too much time is dedicated to needless melodrama and not enough time is dedicated to the villain and this super fun car chase stuff. It's great when it comes back in, but at that point, the movie is almost over, which kind of sucks. But overall, a really good time that'll delight fans of the original books so much.
Alright, so the road to El Dorado is a bit of a weird one for me. On the one hand, no. Are you kidding me? No. Bad. Bad Rotten Tomatoes. Bad critics. But on the other hand, I'm not as head over heels in love with this movie as a lot of other people are. Comedically, it's fantastic. I absolutely adore this movie's sense of humor. Tulio and Miguel are so damn fun and entertaining and gay. I love it. I also really like most of the songs. Sure, they're doing that Tarzan thing where a disembodied voice is singing instead of the characters, but the good news is I love Elton John as opposed to Phil Collins, who I have no strong feelings about one way or the other. So the songs really work for me, even though I would have preferred having the characters sing them, considering how fantastic It's Tough to Be a God turned out. I also think the animation is outstanding. It's clean, it's crisp, the melding of 2D characters and 3D backgrounds make the movie feel richly cinematic, and I think the more adult humor fits the tone of this movie way more than it did in the B movie. But the actual story is my biggest problem with the film. It starts strong, but it's kind of limp and weak by the second and especially third act. I think the way they stumble into this ball game is really contrived. I don't care for the whole melodramatic two friends hating each other shtick, and I feel like they played it way too early with the Jaguar monster, since the last 10 minutes of the film have significantly less tension. But this movie thrives on its great characters, and there's too many memorable moments with them to count. Plus, props for this movie for not doing a tedious liar reveal plotline. I love the scene where the high priest just casually insinuates to Miguel that he knows he is not a god. It's nice that he doesn't care that Miguel had to lie. He's just glad Miguel left a positive impact on his community. Overall, I really like this movie, and I'll rewatch it many more times, since even though it doesn't keep my attention all the way through, it's still a delightfully fun time.
I genuinely can't believe I ranked this movie so high. I am gonna get so much hate for this. But fuck it. If Turbo solidified DreamWorks' reputation for making bad movies, and Trolls World Tour solidified their completely unwarranted reputation for making bad sequels, then it was Shark Tale that solidified their reputation for making bonkers movies. Much like Boss Baby and B Movie, Shark Tale is basically a shitpost that's trying to pass itself off as a feature film. But I will give Shark Tale this. Unlike Boss Baby, it is a really, really good shitpost. This might actually be the funniest movie DreamWorks has made. I'm not joking. The story is scattershot and not well put together at all, but when the movie is making me laugh this hard, I could honestly care less. Every character in this movie cracks me up, from Will Smith fish to Renee Zellweger fish to Jack Black shark to Robert De Niro shark. You can tell the voice actors had an absolute blast with this movie. Every nonsensical plot point is completely justified on account of the insane comedic potential they provide. The only part of this movie I don't like is the middle chunk leading up to the climax, where it tries to take its ridiculous plot seriously and the jokes start to slow down. But other than that, this movie is comedy gold. I have an ironic enjoyment of the story and a genuine enjoyment of the humor. And I don't see why people dislike it so much. It's just that fun. Okay, so as I always say, a movie is more than the sum of its parts. A movie can be flawed and poorly flowed together, but if it has good emotional beats and it's fun enough to justify its existence, I will most likely like it overall. With that said, it's a bit disappointing when said movie is a sequel to a great franchise, because even if it's good on its own, I'm naturally going to enjoy it less because you compare it to how excellent and perfectly crafted the other installments were. Good emotional beats and funny jokes certainly make a movie good, but I can't really call them great if they don't have good pacing or a good connective tissue to tie everything together. And the biggest example of that is Kung Fu Panda 3. I've always liked this movie for its emotional beats and jokes, but I always thought it was a bit too slow-paced for its own good. However, those were the opinions of a nitpicky child, and considering how this marathon has already changed my opinions on a lot of other DreamWorks movies, I was really hoping the same would happen with this movie. And my opinion did change. The movie got a little worse. I'm sorry, y'all, but to me, this is the biggest disappointment out of all the DreamWorks movies. Obviously, it's still really good, but for a franchise this special, really good just doesn't cut it. And it's so frustrating because the outline of the story is perfect. It's just all these little details that pile up and bring down the entire experience. I'm planning to make a video covering all my problems with the movie, so check that out for more details. But yeah, this rewatch made a couple of those problems worse. The new characters annoyed me more this time. The villain was way more embarrassing than I remember, and the weird pacing makes it feel like nothing really happens by the end, which is crazy. A ton of stuff happened in this movie, a ton of really great emotional stuff, but it didn't register for me because the connective tissue between the handful of phenomenal scenes just wasn't that good. It's still a good movie. I still enjoyed myself, but it frustrates me beyond all reason because I can so easily visualize the masterpiece it was so close to being. Again, watch my video if you want the details. All I can say is I adore Mr. Ping because he's the best character in this franchise. Okay, moving on. Let me tell you, even though I already watched this movie less than a year ago, I was still excited to watch it again. Over the Hedge is such a fun time. The visuals are great, the cast of characters is so endearing, it tells its story surprisingly well, it has Hammy, come on! It's just such an easy movie to like. DreamWorks has made its fair share of hateable garbage, and this movie is nowhere near that level. It's a delight. I love jamming out to the music or laughing at the spectacular voice cast. It's just a jam. Over the Hedge is a jam of a movie, and I'm sorry if you can't see that, society. Anyway, I've said all I need to say, so let's move on. Shrek the Third is easily the weakest one. Like, it's a good movie on its own, but coming off of the first two, yeah, it's noticeably weaker. Prince Charming in particular is emblematic of how this movie just isn't really trying quite as hard. Despite some excellent jokes and some great voice acting, Prince Charming just doesn't have the same compelling backstory or intimidating presence as Lord Farquaad and the Fairy Godmother. He's a decent villain, but not nearly as good as what came before. Speaking of which, yeah, this movie gives off hardcore Last Crusade vibes. After such a dark, intense second chapter, the third one has a ton of jokes, and there's not as much tension as there should be until the final battle. The film does have a great message about not letting your insecurities and self-doubt limit what you can accomplish in life. In fact, it arguably portrays this message stronger than the first film did. Plus, the stuff with Arthur is strong, the humor is good, and the underground sewer scenes are fantastic. The emotional moments still hit, the action is still really good. It's still a Shrek movie at the end of the day. Despite being the weakest of the series, it's really, really good, and it continued the story exceptionally well. I'm so relieved it turned out so good, considering the fact that the other DreamWorks film released that year was, less than stellar. How on earth is Penguins of Madagascar this good? Like, this is honestly one of the biggest surprises on the entire list. I saw it last year, and I already loved it and thought it was underrated. But even then, I didn't give it enough credit. This movie slaps. It's so funny and exciting and heartwarming, and it's a cute little family lesson. And seriously, have I not mentioned how shocked I am that I kind of love this movie? I care about the relationship between these four penguins. I live for all these jokes and all these shenanigans. The voice cast is great. The premise makes for so much wacky fun. The animation has a great style to it. Two of the penguins kiss at one point. Like, come on. This is such a hard movie to hate. It's not deep. It doesn't have any super strong themes or life lessons, but it's just fun. Pure, unadulterated fun that I would highly recommend. Out of all the DreamWorks movies that weren't really successful when they really should have been, Rise of the Guardians is perhaps the one that stings the most. Not only is it really great, but it's practically begging for a franchise with how unique and enticing its world is. More creative interpretations of holiday-themed icons, please. Less trolls. Less of this troll shit, DreamWorks. Some elements of this movie fall a little flat, like the villain, who's a good rising threat, but a really boring character with a generic motivation and a super lame design. Also, the design of these kids isn't great. They kind of look like a slightly better version of the kids from Monster House, but only slightly. Still, I like these holiday heroes and the dynamic they have with each other. What really makes the movie, though, is Jack Frost and his identity crisis. I found it really intriguing, and I really wanted him to find out who he was and be seen by people. It got me super emotionally invested. Aside from that, the creative concepts are great, the characters are enjoyable, the stakes are high, and it's just a really enjoyable, wholesome film. Holy shit, I love How to Train Your Dragon. I'm literally the real-life version of Hiccup. The reason I've been procrastinating on my analysis of this trilogy is because this movie is such a hugely talked about phenomenon that I really don't know what angle to approach it at. I guess a good angle for this video would be how wholesome it was. Like, this is really one of those movies where I don't need a deep, unique story to love it. The wholesome, simple bond between the two main characters is enough. That does play into my problem with reviewing it. I don't have much to say, not because it isn't great, but because it's so simple that its greatness kind of speaks for itself, and regardless of how much I love it, going in depth to analyze a movie that's meant to be enjoyed for its simplicity is kind of missing the point. But I'll definitely find something to say. It really changed the game, not only for animation, but for movies about unlikely duos as well. Many people have talked about it before, and I'll talk about it much more later. It's How to Train Your Dragon, man. It's funny, it's down to earth, it's endlessly rewatchable. If it wasn't for the whole forced way Astrid falls in love with Hiccup, it would easily be in my top 5 favorite DreamWorks movies. But as is, it's still a great DreamWorks movie to check out. Holy shit, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is great. It's good as hell. And like, yeah, obviously this shouldn't be a revelation to the guy who called it an underrated gem in my best animated feature winner ranking. But watching this movie right after the stream of mediocrity that DreamWorks made at that time is such a fucking shock to the system that it's unbelievable. The quality of the writing just shoots straight through the roof. Even now, there's little details I never picked up on, like at the beginning when Hiccup makes his entrance to the opening fight. It's framed like an iconic hero entrance, and it's just has so much sauce. And it's just fantastic to watch his character arc where he realizes he needs to let go of dragons for them to be safer. And the villain is great, and their jokes are mostly funny, and the emotional moments hit. Oh my god, it's so great. Just wow, what a perfect conclusion to the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. The only bad thing that just popped up on my most recent viewing is that the lack of TJ Miller is really felt, and the character isn't the same with a different voice actor. I've already talked about Kung Fu Panda before in a Letterboxd review. It's still very funny, very charming, very cheeky, and totally delightful. It's effortlessly charming with great characters and expressive animation. Genre parodies usually make me roll my eyes, but this one does it with such finesse and absurdity that I genuinely adore it. If there's one DreamWorks movie that's been getting a lot of belated acclaim to the point where it can easily be considered a cult classic, it's The Road to El Dorado. And Prince of Egypt, I guess. And Over the Hedge. And Turbo. Okay, a lot of DreamWorks movies have that status. But the one I'm talking about is Shrek Forever After. This movie is underrated as hell, so I decided I'm going to take a deeper dive into its strengths. Right off the bat, this movie presents the conflict of balance, which I am an expert in. The premise is that despite how much Shrek loves his family, he's getting tired of living the same routine every day, and he misses the simplicity of the bad old days. Now, at first, it seems like a bad thing. Yes, we all miss the past for the sake of nostalgia, but part of growing is committing to the future. If something is annoying because of how repetitive it is, you talk it out. Problems will happen, but relying on the past isn't a solution. But the thing is, Shrek isn't really hurting anyone. He doesn't sign the deal with Rumpelstiltskin because he's mad and wants revenge on his family. He's doing it for his own sake, thinking that reliving a carefree day from his past will help his mental health and he could just come back to the exact same moment and no one will even know. So is Shrek being a coward to run away to his past, or is there a sense of truth to wanting just one day to relive your past? This movie doesn't really pick a side. It's up to the audience to decide, and I really like that. Obviously, it doesn't go well, because Rumpelstiltskin tricked Shrek, making Shrek agree to give a day to get a day, but ultimately giving the day he was born, transporting into to a reality where he doesn't exist, but he didn't know that. But now, since he's in a timeline where he doesn't exist, he will disappear when the sun rises the next day. So he meets Donkey, and they go on a mission to find Fiona and make them fall in love again. And when they start falling in love again, you get the feeling that he deserves a second chance, because despite signing the contract being a careless mistake, you can tell that he'll learn to appreciate everything he has after he loses it and gets it back. It's almost poetic how he only starts to appreciate his family after losing it, because it plays into the whole "you never know what you have until it's gone" morality. But when he realizes that this version of Fiona is too jaded to fall in love with him, he gives up and starts fighting for her cause, thinking that even if he dies, he'll spend his last hours making it right for this Fiona, which is very profound and dark. Obviously, they fall in love in the end. The movie doesn't actually kill off Shrek, but despite the result, the fact that he was even willing to die to save Fiona is very novel. And the fact that Shrek can't make Fiona fall in love with him when he's actively trying to woo her, but she does fall in love when he simply helps her do the right thing is no coincidence. It's a reflection on the fact that the best romantic connections are formed by accident and not when one is actively trying to get the other to fall in love with them. It's a great callback to the accidentally in love theme from Shrek 2. So after Rumpelstiltskin is defeated, Shrek and Fiona kiss and everything goes back to normal. And when Shrek says, "No, it was you that rescued me," I felt that, man. So then Shrek and all the other ogres sing a reprise of "I'm a Believer," which played in the original movie. Shrek is content, and the movie is over. Wow. What an incredibly funny, emotional, well-written masterpiece. I'm so glad it got the critical and commercial respect it deserved. Oh, wait. It didn't. But it really deserved it. And now we are entering the top 10.
Chances are you already know how I feel about Shrek. This film is really something special. Like watching it in quick succession with a lot of other merely good DreamWorks movies really made it hit me just how above and beyond Shrek goes to tell a rich, well-developed, well-paced, exceedingly funny story. I'm so happy it's gotten so much attention over the years because it truly deserves it. Again though, this video is getting real long and I think I covered everything I wanted to say about the movie in my best animated feature winner ranking. It's just a work of genius. Hilarious, profound, undeniable genius. I can't wait for more and more people to rediscover and see how great it truly is.
God, now this is how you do a sequel. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish isn't quite as amazing as Kung Fu Panda 2, in my opinion. It's a little bit slower paced, a little less funny, the action is a little weaker, and the villain is just a smidge less intimidating. But oh my god, for every one misstep, this movie gets three other things right. This movie is an emotional masterpiece. It tells such a shockingly powerful story about mortality and human connections and finding purpose with the ones closest to you, and oh god, it's so well done. The scene where Puss decides he's done running and stands up to death is one of the best sequences DreamWorks has ever made. Watching him realize that one life is enough if you spend it with the right people is such a fucking phenomenal message. Death is the most evil dream villain DreamWorks has ever made, and I love what a personal threat he poses to Puss. And it all builds to a sensational climax. The colors in this one also just pop. It's visually striking, it tells a great story, it's funny, it's thrilling, it's emotional, it's everything you could possibly want in a sequel, and more. God. I should really talk about these movies sometime, shouldn't I? Megamind is so damn great, how come no one ever talks about it anymore? Like, it's always cute and wholesome to see a villain redeem himself, but movies like Despicable Me are just that. They're fun popcorn entertainment that teaches kids the basic ideas of good versus evil, but it's nothing too deep. Megamind, on the other hand, tells a story so realistically with so much nuance that I can see it inspiring a real criminal to reform himself just by watching the movie. That's how good it is. Honestly, almost everything in this movie is perfect. It's like everything Despicable Me should have been. Sometimes I don't want to hear celebrities telling jokes out of an animated character's mouth. I just want to see a beautiful, uplifting story about a man trying to find his way and realize that he has a greater purpose than what society has bestowed upon him. I got so invested in his romance with Roxanne and his friendship with Ming. The movie takes its time and makes his relationships feel so natural, and it earns every dramatic beat to the point where I may or may not have actually gotten emotional at what is essentially a liar reveal scene. But that's how well it's done. The beautiful, expressive animation and character designs are amazing, making for such stunning action sequences. The colors are absolutely magnificent. And the soundtrack. Holy shit, the soundtrack. It's so unique and varied and fits the mood of every scene so well. I really can't gush about this movie enough, so we'll put a pin in the conversation and talk about it more in its own separate video. Just great job, DreamWorks. You really nailed it with this one. This ranking was hard as shit to get through at times. The 2010s especially were loaded with so many terrible films that beat me down and made me question whether or not this marathon was even worth finishing. But damn it, I stuck it out. Not only because I had already come so far, but because I knew this masterpiece was waiting for me at the end of the tunnel. Kung Fu Panda 4 is phenomenal. It takes a similar approach as How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World and recenters the narrative on the series' most important aspect, Po and his title as a dragon warrior. It realizes that after all these years of Po embracing that title, it's finally time for him to move on. And this makes for a gripping story where Po discovers his own identity, ultimately realizing that despite how much he loves being the dragon warrior, he needs to move on in order to let the next generation thrive. It's such a profound story about love and loss, and it astounds me that DreamWorks went for such a bittersweet yet ultimately perfect conclusion to this thematically rich, emotionally charged franchise. I previously wasn't sure whether or not this was the best film in this series, but on rewatch, it's definitely got some stuff holding it back from topping Kung Fu Panda 2. The ultra-fast pacing is still annoying, the middle of the story is a bit clunky, and yeah, the villains did switch sides and start respecting Po way too quickly for sure. But for the most part, this movie is a huge improvement over the third movie in nearly every way. The villain is far more intimidating. The gorgeous fight sequence is carried solely by the score back. The focus is on the elements that matter most to the story. Po feels more like his own character than he ever has before. The climax is far more enticing. The emotional beats are even stronger. And the ending is honestly the best of any DreamWorks movie. I know the studio is still going, but honestly, I'm totally content with considering this the series finale for DreamWorks. Like how Endgame is a great series finale for the MCU. It really does feel like the swan song swan song for the entire studio, where they pulled out all the stops and delivered one last Kung Fu Panda emotional masterpiece. It's been quite a rocky road to get to this point, but it was all worth it for films like this. I'll review it eventually, I promise. The wild robot was amazing. I didn't see that coming based on the trailers, but DreamWorks has once again surprised me. This movie honestly feels more like a Golden Age Pixar movie than anything. Every other DreamWorks banger still has a crude sense of humor. For better in the case of Shrek and Kung Fu Panda, since the humor fits the silly tone, and for worse in How to Train Your Dragon, where the comic reliefs, while funny, don't fit the tone of the story. Which is what makes The Wild Robot so cool to me. It doesn't have that crude humor that wouldn't exactly fit here. There are celebrities, but they fit the story so well that you can't even tell it's them. You just hear the characters, which is a sign of good voice acting. And yes, the story is simple, but refreshingly so. It's nice to get a mainstream animated movie focused on emotion first and foremost, rather than feeling like the plot has to be constantly moving to keep kids entertained. This honestly feels like one of the only completely uncompromised DreamWorks movies. Like they didn't add anything because the studio mandated it. They were just allowed to tell a very good story using breathtaking stylized animation, rendered without quite as much flair as Dogman, but that makes sense as this is a very different kind of story. It's not about action, it's about the quiet joys of parenthood and the beauty of nature. Every frame of this movie supports the story and tone visually. It's just gorgeous. I'm just gonna cut straight to the point with this one. Dogman is amazing. No joke, this is easily the best animated movie of 2025 and one of the best DreamWorks movies of all time. I can't believe how good it is. I saw the trailer and thought, oh, that's some cool stylized animation. That'll probably make up for how generic the story is going to be. Even when it got good reviews, I thought, it can't be that good. It's that good. Holy shit, is this an amazing movie. With an incredibly creative story, Petey is honestly one of the best DreamWorks villains. One of the funniest bad guys to ever come out of the studio. He was honestly the best part of the movie. But shockingly, the rest of the movie was pretty great too. There's a lot of characters, and at first I thought the movie was going to be overstuffed and that some of the less interesting characters would take away screen time from the ones I wanted to see more. But that's the crazy thing. I pretty much loved all the characters. I also love how distinctly the fight scenes are animated compared to everything else. Once you see the characters in motion, you know you're in for some cool stuff. It's fantastic. I especially love the final fight, both from a visual standpoint and a character standpoint. It was the perfect way for the narrative to conclude, and it was also cool as shit to look at. Honestly, I just have very little to complain about with this movie. I love just about all of it. I guess we spend a bit too much time where the story goes nowhere. Like, while I enjoyed Dogman bonding with Lil Petey, it did feel like it took a little too much time, and I did want the plot to start moving. But other than that, this was a phenomenal movie. Kung Fu Panda 2 is awesomeness incarnate. It is so much awesomeness crammed into a single movie. I honestly can't believe how well it works. It's a really great depiction of imposter syndrome and trying to live up to impossible standards imposed upon you. But at the same time, it's remarkable to watch Poe's perseverance and passion shine through in spite of everyone telling him to quit. The philosophies offered by the soothsayer are really thought-provoking and interesting. The internal conflict Poe grapples with over choosing to accept his traumatic past and realizing that it doesn't define who he is now is great. The pain Shen had to endure after being banished by his parents is really compelling. All the characters are instantly relatable and identifiable, which makes the drama in this film surprisingly strong. And that drama is channeled into some truly breathtaking, intense, well choreographed, amazingly done fight sequences. From the opening fight scene to the Gongman City battle to the scene where the Furious Five escape from the tower, every new action sequence ups the intensity and dramatic stakes considerably, culminating in a breathtaking, beautiful final battle that beautifully illustrates that Poe has found inner peace. Shen probably could have beaten Po with his abilities and great weapons, but the fact that it's believable that Po can defeat Shen using his inner peace is a really powerful message. It's stunning how a franchise this conceptually goofy can tell such a profound, exciting story that adheres to Chinese philosophies and cultures so well. It's simply amazing. Yeah, I really do need to make videos on these movies, don't I? In some ways, How to Train Your Dragon 2 is kind of the anti DreamWorks movie. Not trying to insult DreamWorks here, I'm just saying that at this stage in the game, we all knew their brand. Celebrity voice cast, somewhat raunchy humor, the whole thing. Even their best movies adhere to this formula while also being really excellent in their own rights. The second How to Train Your Dragon, however, feels the most like a classic Disney film. It has the sweeping emotional score. It has the bond between a quirky loner and his lovable animal sidekick. It doesn't have a lot of raunchy humor outside of some lines from the celebrity voice cast side characters, but they're extremely funny, so it all works out. Overall, this movie just captures a certain magic that isn't present in most DreamWorks movies, even many of the great ones. I guess it is that sense of Disney magic, which makes sense since this trilogy's directors are the same duo behind Lilo and Stitch. They probably picked up a thing or two working for Disney Animation. And yet, I don't want to sell DreamWorks short here because this movie simply would not be the same if it came straight from Disney. DreamWorks are the masters of enthralling, tense, breathtaking scenes, from the finale in Shrek 2 to the insane fights in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. And with this movie, they craft some of the most gorgeous, uplifting flying sequences in any animated film ever. And these amazing sequences enhance such a well-paced, well-told, emotionally rich story that takes my breath away every time I rewatch it. I am so happy this film exists. I feel like it's the one DreamWorks movie that anyone can enjoy, even if they hate DreamWorks' usual output. It's just impossible to deny what a monumental achievement this film and this franchise truly is. I cannot stress enough how much of a fucking miracle this movie is. I almost want to make a video about why it's a perfect sequel. Because even though Shea Frilla's already made that video, I feel like he didn't cover nearly everything that's amazing about Shrek 2. I love nearly every single scene in this movie. Every single aspect of it works. Not only is it consistently funny, not only is it a perfect extension of the first movie's world, not only is it tightly written to the point where there's barely any filler, not only does the entire soundtrack slap, not only is the story deeply emotionally driven and really heartwarming, not only is the entire cast amazing in their roles, not only does it have the best DreamWorks villain ever, not only is the climax unbelievably phenomenal beyond all reason, but this movie gave us Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas, a true cinematic icon. I could go on and on about this movie, but I think you already know why it's a masterpiece. What a godsend of a feature film. I truly never expected Shrek 2 to be more important to my teenage years than my childhood, but I think it's just a testament to its staying power as an integral cornerstone of both pop culture and my generation. It's one of only two DreamWorks films that can stand toe-to-toe with the best Disney and Pixar movies. And I think you can already guess what the other film is.
When I watched this film, it hit me. The Prince of Egypt might actually be the best 2D animated movie ever made. It's honestly impossible to do such an unexpectedly majestic work of genius justice with words. But I'll try. This is the only DreamWorks film that feels like a completely uncompromised vision, a movie that tells the exact story it wants to tell without any executive interference. There's a large celebrity voice cast, and there's some comedic relief, yet neither of those detract from such a profound and sufficiently mature retelling of the story of Moses. Nothing is sugar-coated, nothing is dumbed down or softened. It really is the best possible adaptation of this story. This movie uses the rich language of cinema to convey ideas and themes through the visuals alone. It's tremendously profound for a movie intended for younger audiences. The songs range from great to phenomenal. Not a single bad track to be found. They contribute to the size and scope of the story, taking full advantage of the medium of animation in the process. Even the weakest song in the movie, Playing with the Big Boys, is still one of the best villain songs. The characters are fantastic, with the growing rift between Moses and Ramses coming across as being so heartbreakingly genuine. The sequences and set pieces this movie shows us, from Passover to the parting of the Red Seas to everything in between, is amazing. They do such an amazing job of immersing us in this grand, tragic, and profoundly human story. The true miracle of this movie is how accessible it is to people of all faiths. I've seen many people say that they adore this movie despite being atheists, because this movie isn't about converting you to the religion. It's about sharing the story for educational purposes and immersing you in the story without feeling pandering. And as a Jew who thinks that 90% of Jewish media is garbage, it's absolutely wonderful to see a movie tell a biblical story with such respect, finesse, and faithfulness to the core of what made the original story so impactful. There's so much to be said about this film, and I could never say it all. The Prince of Egypt is easily the greatest DreamWorks movie of all time. It isn't even close. Nothing will ever top this bold, risky, beautifully animated, artistically driven magnum opus of an amazing studio.